Now, perhaps some of you watching this video aren't really all that familiar with who Jesus was. Nevertheless, you regard him as a great moral teacher, along with the likes of, say, Buddha or Confucius. But the reality is, during his lifetime, many people didn't see him in such a positive light. Many people instead saw him as an uneducated redneck. And here's 4 reasons why. First, Jesus came from a family of rednecks. His earthly father, Joseph, wasn't a very educated man. He came from the working class. He was a carpenter, a tradesman. Jesus didn't grow up in a big cosmopolitan city, but rather a backwater village called Nazareth, which many Jews of the day didn't view very highly. In fact, one of Jesus' own disciples, a man by the name of Nathanael, when he first heard about where Jesus grew up, exclaimed in disbelief, "Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?" When Jesus began his ministry, he wasn't even qualified to teach by the academic standards of the day. He never went to any of Israel's theological seminaries, and he certainly wasn't accredited by any religious governing body. And so much of the religious establishment and academic establishment merely brushed Jesus off as this uneducated hick preacher who fancied himself a self-proclaimed rabbi. And finally, much to the scorn of all the smart people of the day, Jesus specifically chose rednecks to be his disciples. Unlike any self-respecting and conventional rabbi, Jesus didn't go to Israel's theological seminaries and try to woo its top graduates who had spent years in rigorous academic studies. Instead, Jesus went straight to the docks to recruit rough and tough fishermen. You couldn't get greater rednecks than those. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not as though Jesus was anti-intellectual or against learning, far from it. He would later on, in fact, choose one of Israel's top religious academics, a man by the name of Paul, who would become the early church's greatest theologian and whose writings comprise much of our New Testament. So why did Jesus seem to prefer rednecks over university graduates? Well, especially in our information age, personal worth is measured by how much we know, how much knowledge we possess, and how many degrees that we have. And the more that we have of those things, the more important we see ourselves in society's social pecking order. But according to what Jesus taught, God has a different value system. That God is concerned with the motives of our hearts, not our brain capacity. That on Judgment Day, when we have to stand before Him, PhDs will mean absolutely nothing. We will be judged on the basis of how we lived out our lives, not by how many mathematical equations we can recite before Him. Einstein won't be judged on the basis of E equals mc squared, but rather according to God's holy standards. And it seems to be rednecks, more than university professors, who are better able at grasping this truth. Keep searching.
Please subscribe and follow Dad on Facebook, link in the description down below.